all over again.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, good lead in there. Hate to waste that.
Glad I missed the first 10 minutes.
There are.
Oh,
I'm like, there are.
we're good.
We're live.
Live?
We're live.
We're live. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to call to order the special committee of the septic inspection at transfer law. And first, I want to thank everybody who's on the committee for participating and for providing your input. This will be one of at least a couple, maybe 3 more sessions to hear from the public and make sure we get good public input. I'm hoping to have maybe a night meeting or at least a little later in the day and maybe in the morning as well to try to catch people. And I know this one was kind of scheduled pretty quickly, so not everyone could be here. I know Supervisor Hogan has an Adirondack Park Agency board meeting today, so she couldn't be here. In your packet, Sarah provided a summary document that I put together back in the spring. I don't think we need to go through all of that, but it's just to demonstrate that we have looked at this for a long time. It's been talked about in various circles, not all of which are the Environmental Concerns Committee at the county. Some of them are like the Real Estate Association. They have had discussions about it at some of their conferences, and they see it. They saw that it was coming down the pipeline, and they are not opposed to it, as far as I know. And obviously, some water quality associations and things like that. So that's just background. I don't plan on going through all of that unless anybody has questions. Okay. And then also provided in your packet is the most recent version of the proposed law. And then behind that, you'll see there's also some information. So before we dig into the law, I just wanted to bring your attention back to this. There is a form at the, this is information. I stole this from Bolton. Supervisor Conover was kind enough to share this with me. So I put it together on, from a Warren County side. And it includes the inspection report that then would be filled out by the third-party inspectors and provided to the Warren County Codes Office. You'll see there's the different forms. And yeah, at the very back, there's like a little sketch thing that they can use. And then at the very, very back is a checklist. So all of this, I won't take credit for any of this. This is all coming from Bolton, which uses the third-party inspection program, which is pretty much what we're proposing here. And Charlie Wallace has reviewed all of this, and you know, he didn't dig into it really deeply, but he understands the concept, and he seems to be, he understands where it's coming from, and he says if you pass it, we'll be ready to handle it. They may need more help, but
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chairwoman. Reading here, this pertains primarily to, or is limited to, properties around lakes, ponds, whatever. In other words, or does this pertain to all properties in Warren County that have a septic system?
that's a good question. Let's go to the law. So go to the first page.
Right.
If you go to paragraph C and D, it talks about the applicability of the law. And the reason, there was a lot of discussion early on about whether or not we should have it apply across the county, or we should just focus on the water bodies,
Right.
properties near water bodies. And that's where we ended up, I don't know, collectively as people discussing it, but we can certainly change that. But the way it's written now is that it would only apply to real property with an on-site septic system and where the property is within 200 feet of the high mean water mark of the water bodies. And then it's only applicable to the water bodies that we have specified in Appendix A.
That's fine. I just
Okay.
looking for that, and I hadn't read that part. I stopped C where it says the intent is, surface water bodies, but it wasn't specific.
Yeah.
This is more applicability, is more
Yeah.
specific. So thank you.
If you go back, so in my mind, going back probably 2 years ago when we passed a resolution about if some of the supervisors were here, remember that resolution we passed about water quality and helping to improve the water management system of Lake George? And we were going to work with other water bodies, like the people out in Cayuga Lake and Canandaigua Lake with their harmful alga bloom programs. So this kind of stemmed from there, saying how important our water bodies are. And that's why we were going to focus on water bodies rather than the entire county as a whole and all septic systems, which I still think is important for people to be inspecting their systems for their own consumer and health safety.
I agree.
But we wouldn't mandate that here.
Right, but I also agree and feel very strongly that we need to protect bodies of water in this county, if for no other reason, health, welfare of citizens, but also they're a huge driver and attraction for one of the biggest drivers, if not the driver, for this county, which is tourism. So goes without saying, this is critical.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And to that point, we have the list of water bodies in the back in Appendix A. I'm sure it's like maybe the 6th-page back. And it obviously number 1 is Lake George, but you go down through there and number 7 is the Hudson River, because, you know, we've got people who are using that as well for drinking water and recreation and tourism.
It gets classified as a Class A body by the DEC.
North of or upstream of Port Edward. Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. Chairwoman Kramer. Hey, you said 200, but it's 250 feet.
Did I say 200? I meant
Yeah, you did.
250.
All right, so I just wanted to make sure there was a classification there, difference. Are we talking about, I see in the Appendix A for the Lake George Twin Lake, all right, is this also to the contributory streams and that come to all these? Because that, to me, is the beginning of the problem. You see what happened just in Lake Champlain, and that's another thing that I have read, and it's also came across at the NACO convention too, is this is not just a problem for our particular area, but the runoffs and a lot of the problems right now, the storms that we're having. They're such intense and heavy storms that it doesn't have time for the water to absorb. So what it starts doing is doing a runoff. And those runoffs go right into our streams, and those streams dump right into the Appendix A list of water bodies. So, you know, I like protecting our water bodies, but these aptitudes that come into the lakes is really where a lot of it begins.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that's still an outstanding question that maybe hopefully this committee can resolve. I have talked to the planning department. They've been very helpful. They did that map of the properties along Lake George that are going to be eligible for the septic replacement funding. So anyway, my point is to say, I think Sarah Frankenfeld through the GIS can identify the tributaries that we want to target with the law if we want to go that route. I just think it makes it a little bit more complicated, but I don't disagree with you that it is a concern as well, the tributaries.
Well, I just want you to think about it. I mean, you're talking either one property or you could be talking 10 up the stream,
Yeah.
you know.
And
So-
how many tribute, do you go up every single
Well,
one?
Like,
Supervisor.
yeah, I think I agree with Supervisor McGowan, but you need to qualify that. In other words, every little trickle isn't necessarily a large contributor to nitrates, et cetera, things that concern you with respect to algal blooms and other stuff. But so you need to look at, or someone would need to look at maps with all these streams, and in my humble opinion, you would need to qualify that with a sizing criteria or something. In other words, it needs to have some definition.
Could you say like, are there sizes of I should probably know this in the DEC regs about sizes of tributaries. Could you say, you know, X size is going to be covered and anything smaller is not?
Yeah, offhand, I don't know that the language in DEC language covers that, but it might. That's a good point.
Okay.
But somewhere I just feel that you need to get some qualification definition to that.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, I've always been advocating to get Friends Lake onto Appendix A. You say Appendix A was because that came off the DEC
Yeah.
and the grant.
Yeah.
So I think
Let's just
that,
put that in right now, Craig.
Hey,
hey, and
Friends Lake,
Friends
Yep.
Lake.
Done.
Done.
Now, what about Finkel Brook, English Brook, Halfway Brook, all these others that are feeding into the watershed of Lake George, as well as Chester Creek that's flowing into the Scroon, Trout Brook, all of these that are of a particular size. And it's, as Supervisor Bruno was trying to get across there, there needs to be a cutoff at some point, but where does that happen? We'll recognize that if failing septic systems affect one water body, they affect them all. But to what degree does it become a public health, safety, and welfare problem?
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you have a recommendation about size cutoff of
I
the
would-
water bodies and or the tributary type?
You know, I was thinking Warren County Soil Water Conservation District might be able to provide some recommendation on that. Dan, you're still on that committee, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
If I might add
Yeah.
to this. With respect to, for instance, Westbrook, yesterday, we had about a 3 or 4 hour session which I attended, and we toured some of the stormwater mitigation practices, et cetera, forest pavement, forest sidewalks. But we started at Betty Little Boulevard and looked at there are, through cooperation with various agencies, the Nature Conservancy and Lake Champlain, Lake George, I mean, whatever. They've done a good job with mitigating, not
wetland
eliminating.
Area, yeah.
Right, there are wetlands in there, gravel wetland is on, et cetera, that take out a lot of the bad stuff from, which mostly comes from Route 9. A lot of the preponderance of it comes from there. My point is, so that's a good example, and that they've done a great job with removing that. And there are, they can cite you figures for how much this and that has been removed. So my point is, yeah, if you look at those streams and that's Westbrook, Eastbrook, not so much. So that might need some attention, but back to Supervisor Leggett's point.
Yeah, and then, do you go by a certain cubic feet per second flow on a stream, and how far that goes back? We don't want to make this too complicated. The central purpose of this is to protect precious water bodies. Those that we are looking at here have the highest density. I will say that around Loon Lake, let's say there's 300 homes around that 80 acres, and that on Friends Lake, there's going to be 250 around the shoreline of that similar sized lake. And that's fairly high density. Yeah, and these are traditionally small, I'll call them non-compliant lots, 100 feet by 100 or so, without a lot of room, and they have a long historical. A lot of the camps, what they were camps built through the 60s into the 70s mostly, and some certain amount of them from the 30s don't have good septic, and that's what we're trying to intercept at this point in time. Upon transference, it's time to update this. It's time to get this done. So it's on those more critical areas. We could just focus on the list you have right here and call it good enough. We've got 80% of the problem done, and for 20% of the cost, for the next 20% that we're trying to catch, it's going to cost 80% more. Might not be worth it.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman,
Just a moment. On Supervisor Leggett's point about the on transfer trying to intercept this, I want to have the discussion about whether or not we should make it something like a periodic inspection rather than an at transfer. A periodic, like every 3 years, would be more burdensome, but it would be catching problems more quickly. I think at transfer is less burdensome on the property owners. And it's a discrete period of time that they need to take care of it. Does anyone have any comments about trying to go other than the at transfer? Yeah. Brad.
We did, thank you. We did discuss that, you and I, and trying to do that. And, really the average septic needs to be pumped, with a family is really 2 to 3 years, with an average size family. If you try to be conservative, put that burden on there that to have it inspected every 3 years. I really think the main thing, one might be the easiest, and is really education. There's so many people that don't really actually understand about a septic system. And a lot of people that are coming up are used to sewers, and sewers are a lot more forgiving than the septics are. But really, an education part. I think it's a key thing in getting people to get on board, because their property value will drop if the water, the quality goes. So you would hope they do that. For the tributary size, I would say base it on a volume. If there's a certain volume size of water that's coming down this, because obviously the larger the better. I'm not trying to say every little brook, stream, and and little runoff, because a lot of these things are pretty much dry until you get a rain. But really, I think we need to focus on educating the people of what we're trying to do here, and how do we get that out is really my main concern. And then people wouldn't think that we're trying to jump in and cram anything down on them. But educating them and getting them to go as we move this law forward, to protecting the importance of protecting our water bodies. Make sense?
So I don't hear anyone jumping up saying they want to go to the annual or the periodic inspections, but do the at transfer and then continue to educate about the need for ongoing maintenance and pump outs. I mean, like you said, every 2 to 3 years, they need to do a pump out, but that doesn't necessarily mean they need an inspection every 2 to 3 years.
Well, usually when you do a pump out, okay, one of the things they'll do is open up the front and the rear of a tank, and they'll look for a flow.
If there is a tank.
If there is a tank, I mean, some of these, like I said, are basically back in the day, 55-gallon drum cesspools that are completely rotted, that are just root bed. On top of that, you got blocks, you have stone, you'll have, whatever they built back in the 40s and the 50s. And that's one of the things, being on the planning board now, is one of the things that we really like when houses come onto the lakes, is really updoing and getting an upgraded system that you're always looking for. And they've come a long ways with their systems, especially, you've heard of UV treatment with your water lines, and now they have, a UV treatment for your septics too. It's just really amazing that the technology, it always changes. But, a lot of these, from what I have read and from what I have heard, is that, a lot of the problems that they come across during their inspections, really, they're minimal fixes. And that's what we need to get out there to tell the people, so they're not threatened that, oh my gosh, I'm looking at a $60,000. And I think this is what scares, a lot of people, is that, oh my gosh, my what are we going to do? It's going to cost so much money. The other thing I think we need to look at too is there's some of the facts that, were brought up before, is how we do it on lands that there's not enough. what do we do there? They're gonna say, I don't have any land. Well, in my opinion, if we can get a system that's 70% better than what was there before, we have to move for those variances. But that would be a process for a variance. So, I mean, so when Supervisor Dickinson says, it's gonna be a lot of work, it could be, but I think of the majority, the whole goal is to get us set, to really educate the people and really, let people understand that, the difference of, between a septic and a sewer, I think would really help immensely.
Supervisor Bruno?
Thank you. Sure. Yeah, I mean, some of Brad's balance points, I mean, this, with respect to the archaic, antiquated, whatever septic systems, this will address those. That's what this is about. So over time, you'll get rid of those 55-gallon drums and the laid up stone, what have you. But additionally, with respect to a lack of area to install a conventional system, there are fairly economical systems out there now that are almost like a small treatment plant that are not that expensive, more expensive maybe than a conventional. And what they do, the effluent from those, it is so clean that you can reduce your leach field size by at least 50%. So there are avenues there and maybe a variant. So where am I going with all that? I think that there are ways out there to deal with this, to mitigate this without a lot of harmful effect on property values. So actually, whoever puts the bill for that will enhance the value of that property. So somebody's going to do that. With respect to periodic inspection, I think one of the ways you could deal with that, again, as Supervisor McGowan stated, these companies that do septic system
Pump up.
maintenance, many of them, when they open those up, they will, or if you ask, they will perform an inspection of your septic tank, etc. You can't inspect the leach field per se, but you can inspect the tank and the integrity, and that's where a lot of this comes from. If the leach field is failing, well, you'll see that right away yourself. But so maybe a way to do periodic inspection if you have qualified contractors, so the service providers, where you want to call them, and you had a form, and of course they may charge the customer with a fee, but you could have a form where they have inspected that and attest to its integrity or lack thereof. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what Bolton has in here, like a form that they fill out and provide in, yeah. A report, their report of their inspection. The one thing I want to say about the variances and stuff, there is written in here a variance procedure from any county decision that may be made, like by county buildings and codes. They could come to a committee to try to have an administrative review, like a variance, like a zoning board of appeals kind of thing. But that's only for the codes decision. This law is not at all meant to supersede any of the town board's jurisdiction with respect to new septic systems. If someone came in and they wanted to put in a new system and they need to go to their town board of health, they still have to do that. It's still part of the underlying process. And if they need to get a variance, they go to they'd go to the town board that is applicable for that kind of variance. I'm just, that's kind of getting in the weeds more than I wanted to today, but there is a process. So if someone says, I can't get this inspected because it's November and I need a variance from the county's law to let me wait until April or whenever, that's a variance we could give. If it's a variance about setback distance or that kind of thing, that would have to go to their town, like a normal. And yes, okay, maybe that is going to start having more people show up at the town saying we need variances for that kind of stuff. to Supervisor Dickinson's point about it, putting more burden on the town to go through their administrative processes. Wait, just a second. Supervisor Beatty,
Well,
you had your
yeah,
hand raised a while ago.
One question was, the list for, lakes that, you have on Appendix A.
Yeah.
Were those the only ones that are covered by the grant money, 330,000 that would help, owners with their septic if they had to get new septic systems?
This list was developed during that process when we were applying for the grant money from DEC. But in the end, the only one that's eligible right now is Lake George.
So these other,
They're not eligible.
they're
for
not
the funding.
eligible to apply for that grant money.
Correct.
Was there another source or pool of money available?
There's money from the fund for Lake George,
That's what, yeah,
but I
okay.
think that's only for Lake George properties.
Again, that's for Lake George. So right now, there's only funds available for Lake George properties, and these other ones, there's no funds available at this time.
Right.
Okay.
At this time, yes.
Yeah, and concerning the transfer, septic inspection upon transfer of ownership, I think Connecticut has, there's different places, different states have different things, but I think they have it's either a 3 or 5 year requirement that, it's 5 year in Connecticut, that they're inspected, lakefront properties inspected, sewer systems and so forth. And I don't think that's too invasive, because as a lake owner, if I own a house on the lake, I would want that because the value of my property would go up, or it would go down if the lake became polluted. So to me, if I'm a lake owner, I'm going to be happy for any type of law that will ensure that the quality of the lake remains pure. And anything that is detrimental to the quality of the lake will take my home value and drop it in the dumper. No pun intended. So, I think the overall consensus of lake owners is they want to have something. They want it to be fair though. And I totally agree with that. And I think every 5 years seems to be somewhat fair, but that's arbitrary. And, that's something you guys can decide if that's too much or not enough or whatever. But we all agree that if we lose the quality of these lakes, we're sunk as a county. More importantly, as a civilization, when we start letting qualities of water bases just go by the wayside. So, one out of every 8 jobs in Warren County is tourist related. So just put that in an economic spin cycle for a minute. So again, I think this is a positive piece of legislation. Once you guys do narrow it down and iron it out, I think it's going to be very positive and very well received with 90% of the population. There'll be a few, like anything, that will not. And I'm not big on regulation, by the way. I'm an anti-regulation guy, but this is one thing that I could get behind because it's the best for everyone. So that's what I want to put
If
out.
you guys will humor me, well, go ahead, Supervisor McDermott.
No, I just, if 95% of the population would agree with this and fully support it, Edna and Mr. Thomas, so what do you think? I mean, I live in Glens Falls. I mean, I want to vote and do the right thing. But would you have a constituent or some that would have some issues, or
I definitely will have some that will have questions.
okay.
And we've discussed this at our board meetings several times because we feel like we have a very wealthy population over here who have retired and moved to Hague, and we have the local people who've been there forever. And their big concern is that they have to go in for a big, expensive septic system. How can they afford it? I was happy to hear with this funding that people up in my town did get letters from the county letting them know that that money was available. But I think it's something we have to do, even though people aren't going to be happy with it, want to protect our lake, then I really think we do have to work at it. But I kind of agree with Craig, I don't think we want to make this so complicated that we spend all this time trying to figure out what direction we're going in. Let's kind of pick the simple path that we can work on and kind of move forward. But I definitely feel it's something we can't just ignore and say, it's really not a big problem. It is.
The key is to get cooperation, is to get support, is to
Right.
get people ideally to willingly agree, and it just, but when it comes to dollars and cents, and, some folks would opt for, dollars and cents as being the criteria, as opposed to maybe taking care of the system. I don't know. I'm looking for a rational way that the outlying communities would kind of put their hand up and say, hey, good idea,
I know, but from a dollar and cents perspective, like what does it cost you if you continue waiting another 20 years and then you've got a broken system and a broken lake? How much will it cost to fix our water quality once we put that in the tank? Just a second. If you'll humor me, I want to try to take a straw poll. I mean, we're here to work at this, like
Right.
Supervisor Frazier said, and not to make something too complicated. And I have no ownership authority over this. This thing I came up with from Bolton. The whole inspection law is basically what Bolton already has in place because they use the third-party inspectors
Right.
versus Queensberry that has their own code, they have a full-blown code enforcement office. We don't have that. So this is basically crafted off of Bolton. So if people want to change this, let's change it and make it workable. But if you will, I want to try to just take a straw poll of everybody who's here about the at transfer versus periodic inspection. So we can kind of, I'm not going to hold you to this forever and all time, but where are people standing on that right now? If you are okay with the at transfer, put your hand up.
I'm okay with the at transfer.
I thought
Versus, and if you would like, yeah, Supervisor
you
Bruno.
said that it's at transfer or 5 years.
Yeah, yeah,
I thought
or
they
3
were-
to 5, whatever.
Right, but I thought they were like this. In other words, you have the at transfer, and then after that, you had periodic inspection.
No. The law doesn't, the way it's written right now, it doesn't require you to then check again in 5 years. or 3 to 5 years.
We're,
We're debating that, yeah.
okay, we're not debating whether we should have just at transfer or 5-year inspections.
Yes,
Yes, that's what she said.
that's what I want to know what you guys
So
think.
right now, we all raised our hand, or most of us raised our hand for, sorry, Sherman, I didn't
Go
mean to
ahead.
interrupt you,
Go
Sure
ahead.
you did.
for ad transfer. But I was gonna raise my hand for the every 5 years too, but that's down the road.
Well, I guess that's another option. Okay, at transfer and periodically thereafter.
Yeah.
You want that
I don't think it's
unreasonable? Okay. Okay. Okay, but I think there's consensus that at transfer people think is okay.
I think that's a good start.
Okay, all right. We could still look at that later, but all right. So, who had their hand up?
I did.
Brett.
And
I know, Frank hasn't said anything, but he's usually.
Supervisor Fraser, you're absolutely right, and a lot of your residents are. I happen to be more familiar with septics, all right?
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm not a master, I'm not a master, and I'm not an engineer, but, I mechanically know, as, Supervisor Bruno or Supervisor Dickinson, where you design them. But understanding them and seeing the new products. And that's where I come back with education. What I was thinking of pulling, maybe getting a little brochure put together where we can hand out to the towns for the meetings and that, so people can get more familiar. I think that the whole process is, like, oh, a new septic, I live on the lake. Oh, we're talking $30,000. No. Or, geez, I live on a rock. And what am I gonna do? It's gonna be very expensive. I don't have the land. The fear is how much. So if we could put them out there with the systems, and like I said, nowadays, the tanks, you could bring them in on a pickup truck. They're plastic tanks. That's unbelievable. And the enhanced systems of what they can do. And it's really, in my opinion, I think the price is coming down in the sense as you don't need an elaborate and the land to do it. You can do it on a smaller parcel. But putting that together, and another thing I think we really need to work on is working on a list of engineers and the inspectors and the septic contractors, so people have that option, to help them out and get people that, that are interested in doing that. And it all goes back to, and I hate to repeat myself, it's education. Just educating the people more, but giving them the option of helping them. And if we could put that out, and they could pick up the flyers. Because I've heard from a lot of people, well, geez, my system and I've done whatever I can, but are you selling? Well, no, not now. But the people are aware that their systems are old and they're trying to do whatever they can to do it. These are the people that are educated and understand their system, and they're more careful what they put down there and what they do. And
Madam Chairwoman?
Yeah, just a second. I was gonna say on the list of, I know there's been training recently up in the northern part of the county to try to get more people who are qualified to do these inspections, but that's still something we need to work on, I think, because we don't want people to be left without qualified inspectors. And there is in this form that Bolton does, they have a list of people who are, this says licensed septic haulers, but I think we would need a list of inspectors too, that people could call.
there's a course out there, sorry. There's
Yeah,
a course that it's out there for people to get into it. It's kind of the same course of a house inspection. You're gonna take, to get it certified, that, there's certain things that you can look for. You don't have to have a PhD in physics to understand that, crap rolls downhill, but,
Right.
I wasted that money.
yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Sorry, Supervisor Bruno. No, but I mean, but a basic understanding how they go and the things to look for.
Right.
So,
Thank you. It sounds like from this discussion, there's three goals. Well, one is education of owners of on-site water, wastewater systems, the protection of common resources and our variances that we grant for wastewater systems. That is one of the things we note. It's a protection of a common resource. So private property owners may get a little rankled by having something imposed upon them, but in these sensitive areas, they are affecting a resource that's also used by others. And it is not just the open bodies of water. A lot of our variances are with wells within 100 feet of the septic.
Absolutely.
That's a huge one there. So it's the drinking water that comes along with these. Again, because of the history of small lots along lake shores. And then interdiction, if that is the right word for it, we are trying to catch a problem at some point in time. We're trying to catch it, and this, upon transfer, is an opportune time for it. It's the least invasive. You're not coming onto somebody's property arbitrarily, like every 3 or 5 years, saying, okay, how's it going? It is upon transfer of property. So thinking of those three goals, how does all of this fit? And I'd like to throw in one other thing that we should consider in here is the age of the system. And I didn't, it's asked here in the inspection form, and inspectors are a better way of going than saying a professional engineer, because they're hard to come by during the season. So a lot of systems have gone in according to the 75A regs, Appendix 75A regs in Department of Health. Those being followed, if you have done that within, say, the past 20 years, perhaps that system still is pretty good. But if it was done within, so at some point, I think we should mark what systems need this particular inspection. If you can prove it was put in within the past 5 years, why why go through all the hoops of an inspection?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dan.
Thank you.
and you, did you?
I wasn't implying that we go around and start inspecting all the existing systems. What I was talking about was these ones, when they're replaced from that point out, you would have periodic inspections. Because quite honestly, I want to say this correctly, I don't want to, not turning a blind eye to the efficient systems, but I don't know that you can just start off now and run around, start inspecting everybody's system and saying, hey, you got to replace yours. I think that's what people are fearful of. But what I was talking about was this inspection at sale, and from that point forward, inspect that in 5 years.
Yeah, it does. It does. I just don't think you have the consensus of the group.
No, but I
To
just
do it
want to
that way.
clarify that. I
Yeah.
wasn't talking about
Yeah,
starting.
yeah.
Oh, no,
You're as each particular
As-
property is turned over,
Yes.
then from that point of that property. Yeah,
Thank
I understand.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If these houses are hooked up to a sewer system, what happens on transfer? They shouldn't have to have anything.
Nothing. They're
You just
excluded.
accept-
Okay,
They're
because Hague does have its own
Yeah.
wastewater treatment plant. We probably have like
Yeah.
400 people on there. So I'm just saying we have a lot of people who then wouldn't have to have that.
That's right. They would,
Okay, I
yeah.
just want to be sure
Yep.
on that. Thank you.
We can double check the definition of septic system, but I'm pretty sure it won't include your town system.
What trim?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's the difference between sewer and septic, and now you understand it, see?
Right. Well, I just wanted to be
Well,
sure. That
yeah.
was my feeling, but
All right, yeah.
The town, you guys don't have a sewer treatment plant though, right? It's more like a.
we most certainly do. Ask
I
those people.
thought it was more
Ask
like
those
a,
people who are on the system and pay $800 a
Yeah.
year for user fee.
Yeah.
They'll tell you we're on that system. Yes, they will. We definitely are. We have our own plan.
treatment system. Okay. Frank, do you want to add anything? I know.
Yeah, well, contrary, I guess, to popular belief, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I think if you live around the lake, you have to be responsible and you shouldn't be polluting the lake or a major tributary. But I think Brad's right. I think it's all about education. I think the technology has advanced, and I think there's ways around this, and that's what needs to be done. And I guess my main concern is like in a hamlet area where there's small lots, that could be a problem, but we can get around that. I think your major problem is going to be enforcement,
Yes.
because the law is only as good as the enforcer. And, same with the building codes. And I see things that go on that aren't enforced. So,
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about it. So I don't think it's going to get enforced.
I have to agree with you on that. Frank.
Well,
True.
let's save that
I
and
can't believe
I-
you just went on record.
Yeah.
You want to know? That's what I think.
I know, Frank, I appreciate your frank comments very much. And I think we should save that discussion for another day. I think we've covered a good amount of the applicability. And I'm glad that Lexi is here because in my mind, some of the enforcement may come through her office
Mhm.
because she sees every transfer. So we may be able to catch things that way, but I don't want to get into the weeds on that one today. But it's definitely something to think about. And just before unless anyone else has any other burning things. Craig, in the exemptions under number 4, there is a thing saying you're exempt if you have a brand new installation within 3 years. So maybe we could bump that up to 5 years. If you've been inspected or you've had a brand new inspection or installation within 5 years of the date of the transfer, then you're okay and you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, I'll mark that down. Lexi, did you want to say something before we close out?
What you were just talking about, I think I remember listening to Dennis talk one time about if it was a brand new system that was put in, designed by an engineer, there shouldn't be any issues with that system for at least 10 years. So I know that you're saying 5 years here, but I think it all depends on what type of system it is that was put in, and who designed it, and put it
Good
in.
point.
Was it just something that somebody pulled in and replaced? Or was it a brand new system that was designed by an engineer firm and put in that way? So your length of good time would, be probably at least 10 years.
Okay,
So there could be different times that we looked at, timeframes on that.
Good point.
okay.
And then I guess the big thing is like what Brad's saying, education, because I think that you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna fear the cost of having these inspections done. And so if, say, somebody sells something and then you're saying 5 years from now or 3 years from now, it's got to be inspected again, make sure that all that knowledge is out there, that they know at whose cost that is, and make sure that the realtors have all this information to be
Right.
able to share with clients, especially people that are moving into the area from, say, downstate that don't know anything about septic systems. Make sure that the realtors are forwarding this information on that. Hey, you're buying this house, there is going to be an inspection at the time of sale. However, 3 years or 5 years from now, you're also either going to have to pay, or somebody's going to have to pay to have another inspection done.
Or at least a pump out. You're gonna need to do that kind of thing
Right.
going forward. So maybe we can work with the realtors on a form or a flyer or something that they can give out to clients. I like that idea a lot.
Pulling the realtors, and I just think is a good idea to keep them informed and keep everybody on the same page. Sometimes things get overlooked when there's sales, and the realtors don't always share the accurate information. So.
Well, in their defense too, it's right now it's a little bit, it's not consistent from town to town. So they don't, they have to really be on their game in order to know what's what in each town. A reason to go for a county law. Yeah, Frank.
I think without the education, that's where you get the resistance. Because people they think you're just, coming on their property to want to inspect. Without the education, then they get their backs up. But if you can educate them to the benefits of having a proper system, I think the resistance will be.
Okay. Yes, Brad. And then
Just a little
Doug.
quick one. I had one today. I saw someone walking in the neighborhood. And there was 14 houses in my neighborhood. And I saw him over on my neighbor, was checking outside the house into his generator and back in the pool. Which really upset me. He walked across my new grass that I'm growing. But then when I came out to question what he was doing, and I happened to know it was National Grid. With a big meter, he's sniffing the meters. He's sniffing for gas. They do it every 5 years. And he goes, he's down in Albany area where they have, I said, but it was, what I'm saying? It's like I said, but you talk about fear. People don't want people, but for me,
Right,
in like
right.
my neighborhood, I'm like, it would have been nice if you guys sent out a card that you're going to be out inspecting. I said,
But we're not coming out. We're not sending Charlie Wallace out there.
Well, no, but what I'm saying
homeowner
is,
is gonna
you know,
have to call up
people have the
somebody.
fear of that, and
Yeah.
I didn't know. But
Okay.
the whole question is that if I would have known, if I was educated that they were going to be around sniffing meters, I would have said no problem. But when you find someone behind your bush sniffing your meter, you're going to question what he's doing there when your dog's going.
Do that again.
Yeah. Doug,
Okay, we'll raise this conversation a little bit and
thank
say,
you.
Oh, that was a low blow.
Education, I firmly believe, is part of this whole scenario. The lack of information scares people. When they don't know what's coming or they don't know the process, that the automatic reaction of 99% of people is no, and they back off. So I totally agree that education must be a part of this whole process. And part of that education should be the value of their home or property, not their specific property, but of properties if quality of the lake goes down. I mean, we need to educate, and it sounds common sense, but it's not so common, that the property values could decrease if the quality of water decreases. So that's part of the education process. So in other words, you're helping other people. Yeah, you're helping yourself. You're maintaining your property value and probably even increasing it. So that's part of that education process. You know, when we talk about money, well, I don't want to spend 10,000 for a new septic tank. On the other hand, do I want to lose, my property value go down 8% because now the quality of the water has gone down significantly in the last 5 years or something. So that's just part of the education process is all I'm saying. And from a business standpoint, that should be part of it. So there you go.
Okay, good. So we'll set up another meeting. Make sure you try to give you guys some more notice next time. And anybody else, Administrator Moore or Robert, Craig?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. What if we make this under section 1, paragraph D, applicability, that it encompasses the whole county and towns can opt out? And that makes it all uniform at once on things.
You're killing me, Craig. Okay,
Again, consider it. We're going to have another
we'll
meeting.
consider it. Yeah,
there, But
okay.
that might be a.
Yeah. And I know you had said
easier
you
way.
wanted to get rid of where it says it shouldn't apply in Chester, because you do want it to apply. Or at least your town board is saying yes.
That's right, in our zoning administrator.
Okay, all right. So we'll work on that. We'll look at that. We'll talk about enforcement. Anything else people are burning desires to talk about next time? Okay,
Good.
could I have a motion to adjourn our special committee, and I'll report on this tomorrow at the full board. Supervisor Bruno, second by Supervisor McGowan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you,
job.
everyone. Thanks
Good
for
job.
staying.